Hey everyone, it's crazy hair day for me, and today we're going to be releasing two videos, and one of them is displays. So in this video we're gonna go on how I would create this industrial display, and we're gonna look into creating the floor, setting up the background, also adding people and motion blur to kind of finalize that mockup and use it for our creative work. This is great for portfolios and also adding another dimension to your renders. So I think it's really interesting to add these into videos. I always wanted to do these. Let's get into it.
So welcome to this video. Today we're gonna look how to build displays, sort of industrial big displays. I'm not gonna be looking into LED, but build simple display that has this hexagonal pattern. We're gonna use procedural nodes for this. You can achieve like really cool displays. So if I turn off the other one here, if we see the display like that in the centered position, I think it's super cool. Okay, so we're gonna start building up like the basic scene. So I think all we need is a floor. So I'm just gonna bring in plane, so object plane, and I'm gonna press ND to see actually the wireframe. And we're gonna have this floor, and I'm gonna place a person. So we're gonna put in figure just so we see the real world scale. I can immediately see that I need to click on that plane, press T for scale, and click and drag, make it way bigger. So let's say we're gonna place our display in the center of a scene. So if I click on that person and I'm gonna press E and move it using axis tool, like move it front, and then I'm gonna bring another plane. This plane I'm gonna put in orientation Z minus, just so it's facing toward us. I'm gonna lift it slightly up. We think about the classic ratio of our videos, so like 1920 by 1080, which makes display like this. And I don't think it's anything bad, but it's just like, so for industrial displays, I would just go half of the actual centimeters. So we're gonna do 540. So 1080 is a half of it, and I'm gonna drag it slightly down, just so we have a little room there for some sort of like a pedestal. We're gonna start by actually applying Redshift material. Click on materials, standard, and drag it to our plane. We're gonna call it display, and the plane on the ground we're gonna call floor. Now you can keep the person here, or you don't have to, but I don't think, since we already established the scale of the scene, we don't need it anymore. Go and look into that material. So I'm gonna double click our material, click on one of these circles, and show node editor. With node editor, I'm gonna bring in texture and plug it into our color and also into our emission color. And into this texture, I'm just gonna go, and I have prepared this display texture, and it's a PNG sequence. So I'm just gonna click on the first one and go into the animation tab. So whenever we put in texture, we have an animation tab above, and we press simple mode, and it will be animating. I know this is 25 frames per second. I'm gonna detect all frames. So it says 350 frames. And now when I'm be scrubbing through, you could see the animation of that texture is actually going through. So I'm just gonna keep it on this blue one. I already like it. So we have this classic emissive material. It's the same from the back. So I'm gonna put in basic dome light, just so I see how the display is reacting to the light. And I'm just gonna find in the asset browser, I'm gonna go to HDRIs, and I'm gonna have, or maybe this one, the Studio 18, yeah. So I'm just gonna drag it here. Now it's applied. So now I have my HDRI in place. So I can create some sort of wall. So I can click on the floor and hold Control and press R for rotate, and hold Control and then just click and drag and holding Shift we're going to do exact 90. And I'm going to press E and lift it up. Again, holding shift to snap. And we're going to push it a little bit back. So I'm just going to, and I don't see my axis because it's way up. So I click both and I'll just scale them. Actually, I'll scale first floor and then I expand as well the background. So I have things like that, and if I go center here, I think this is a good start, and I'm gonna be focusing on texture a bit more now. Let's say this is our scene, and I would be resetting the camera, and I'll move my null a little bit up and move my null back to a little bit more up, so I have it like centered, and then I can lock my camera. So using the protection tag on the camera, I can't move it anymore. So now I know I'm exactly centered. I'm gonna go into that display and click again on the circle, show node editor, or you can go to your material browser and double click. I will show the node editor. We can go to that standard material, go to emission tab and increase emission here, and you can see that display start emitting color. Now I'm gonna create that hexagonal pattern. So I'm gonna create another material. So standard material, drag it into our scene and make it pure black. So I'm just gonna remove the base, remove reflections, and make material layer. Give some problem, material layer. Drag this into our base, our emissive material, drag into layer 1 and plug it into surface. So this is just this basic classic material mixing. And now we need to say to the material layer what's our mask. So we're gonna bring in tile node. So tiles, and we have these material 1, material 2, and then there is a mask. So I'm just gonna plug in into layer 1 mask on our material layer. And now you see a masking sort of overlaying, but the problem is the tile texture is square, but then it gets stretched. So our actual display has longer width. What we have to do is go and put in triplanar. So I'm gonna type in triplanar, plug in onto the wire, so it gets connected immediately, and you see that got stretched the tile texture correctly. So image X across the whole scene, and then we can use the scale actual. If we use global scale, we can make it bigger, larger. So you can see you can get this. If I'm gonna get out of this, we're gonna go closer to it. We can get this sort of texture on the display. Really up to you what you're gonna do with it. We're gonna get rid of this red. I'm just gonna make everything pure white. So we get this grid, and I'm gonna change this to hexagons. And now we get this like hexagonal display. What I can do is increase that grout on like tiles. So I can just increase the grout, and we can have like really like this sort of display. And then there is bevel, just kind of soft, which doesn't look good and realistic. This really doesn't work. So I'm just gonna go completely sharp on this one. So let's say 0, 0, 1, and then we can say like how much we want the grout to be when we get like this kind of, this already looks pretty good. I think I really like how it was here. So we can copy these values. So the values are 0, 298 and 0, 0, 34. I really like this look. One of the things that it's different there is the rotation. When I go close to it, you can see like you can still rotate the hexagons. I will change that pattern. So normally it's 0. So I put it to 170. So when we're looking from a side, we see like these lines. So it's like a nice leading lines. I kind of like this. If I go back to my front, this is sort of what I want to see. We're going to call this material display. We can save it for later. We're going to create a material for floor. We're going to call floor and apply it to our floor. just so we get nice reflections. And I'm just gonna make it a little bit darker, go into that material and go into our asset browser, look into textures, open it up, imperfections, and we can go, we have these scratches here. Let's drag it in, scratches 9, bring in onto roughness, and we see already we're getting nice look. So I'm just gonna bring in ramp and I'm gonna be dialing the values. So the ramp will be controlling how much, and we can solo this node just so we see what's happening here. So we wanna be in this kind of gray area. So I can make this white a little bit grayish and make it dark, less darker, and kind of find this middle ground where I see the small scratches too, like that. That's kind of a lot, but we can always do like 5 by 5 and you get like a smaller scratches. And then we can dial it more just so we see just a little bit. And if you don't want to be floor that reflective, you can even unplug this and plug it into reflection and isotropy. So now it's a little bit different. It's depending on the camera angle, so it's a little bit harder to see, but we can actually control our roughness just by the slider. If I'm going to go back to that ramp, open show node editor, I'm gonna go to that ramp, you can actually correct the values again, and now you can see it. So you need to go a little bit sharper this way, but we essentially see these angles. So it's actually an isotropy solve for angles in your material, how they reflect the light. We can still see this, but the floor is more consistent, and we can even make it more reflective and less reflective. So this is something you should consider, like doing these kind of floors if you want to have like better control, like control the roughness slider, or you can combine. I think the best is to bring in more of these, bring in color layer and plug it into color 1, bringing another texture and plug it into color 2. So we have 2 layers, layer 1 and layer 2. We can average those. So if I be turning this off, it will be like that. If I be turning this on, you see it's like that. So we can combine this. I can make this 6 by 6, so it's more detailed. And now I can plug to anisotropy, turn off the solo, and again, we could have a better control. This is not so visible in anisotropy mode, so we can sort of squeeze it using the ramp. And we can see what we do here. If I click on the ramp and make it more obvious, so this way we're gonna see these little, and I'm gonna make it even more. Okay, so let's say this is our floor, and I'm gonna make it a little bit more rough. I'm kind of okay with it. We can change that reflection color to be darker. Now I'm gonna make that background, and we create this sort of panel. So I'm gonna bring in cube, lift it up, just making slightly bigger than the display from the ground. I'm actually gonna go into the free mode and making it like that. Activate fillet on that, just so we get nice rounding there. And this panel will be sort of metal texture, will be behind it. We can have a look. Maybe it could be slightly bigger than that and slightly wider. And then I bring in Alt Cloner. I'll click on Cloner, holding Alt, and remove the Z axis. And then I see that this is 260 wide. So I'm going to make that cloner 260 on X. That will be exactly what we need. And because we have that bevel, we're going to see these little lines here. So we're going to see distinction between the panels. And now I can make it like wide enough just so when we in that camera mode, we see just like that. I actually like when it's slightly elevated above the floor. So there's like a dark, I can take it a little bit lower than that. I'm going to apply material standard. I can restart IPR, and we're going to make this metallic. So this is metallic texture, and we're going to do the same thing as we did with our floor. But what we need to do this time, we're going to have to, first we can type in like we have dirt, smudges, scratches. So we can do some scratches, but we can also go into textures, look into anisotropy. So aniso, if I type in aniso, we can see anisotropy. So we have a tiled here. And if I plug it into reflection roughness, we see what it does. So it has this kind of brushed look. So what we want to do is, and in my opinion, we're going to rotate it 90, like down, and I'm going to put ramp just so I can control this better. Now we can see it. And again, I'm just going to plug it into anisotropy instead of the reflection. Now it's in both. It's not bad at all. But I'm just going to remove it from roughness, and I'm going to dial it more contrasty just so we can see it. And you see it does this kind of look. So we can just going to go a bit closer and see what I'm doing. Open up that material again, and first have a look like that. So I want something like that where I see those edges, and then I can control the scale. I say like 1 by 1. I can say 3 and 6, and you see how it gets stretched out. So if I control this and I look at this properly, I can do 1 by 1, and it's like that. If it's 3, let's get more stuck. 6. So just keep it 1 and keep it 3. It gets thinner. So something like this. And then I want to go into that material, into that texture, and bring in jitter and take out float values. So numbers actually remap the offset. So now I can take the values from that float jitter, and I say like, you know, if I do 500, it starts remapping that, but we don't really see it. But if I do like 3000, it starts mixing them up. So each of them panels have different look a little bit. So they've been made in the same factory, but it's just not exactly the same. So now when I go back, I see this. I can actually control the roughness by ramp. So I'm just going to take this and plug it into roughness as well. But I'll plug another ramp for roughness. So that higher one here, you know, we control anisotropy separately. So this is for anisotropy, and this goes to roughness. So we can then really control how our roughness is affected. If I reverse this, we can dial it. Now I'm gonna make it more flat, so this is too contrasty, something like that. So let's say I have this industry material, and I want to simulate a little bit actually how it's looking in terms of like realistic build. So I can take this display and duplicate this by holding Control and dragging it a little bit behind. I would call it display back. Remove this material and hold Alt and add thicken object. Now we add like thick object and hold that tick and bring it all the way back to that display. We can dial the numbers on the Z-axis, like holding Alt and dragging this number, just because like there's only so much you can do in the viewport. So I can drag it all the way there, and then we can add in bevel into actual thicken, between thicken and the display back. And I can reduce the chamfer to 0.5 and then increase subdivision by 3. So we have sort of like a panel back. So we feel like the display is have some internals happening there, and you know, we can put these together with the display, and we're gonna call it display. So Alt G to create a group, display and thicken affected together. We're gonna apply some dark plastic to it, so we can look in the browser actually. Plastic materials, and we have like acoustic foam here. We have a plastic glossy, so I can apply this plastic glossy to our thicken effector. That's quite good. I think I have these lattice beam as well before. Copy these over here, and I'll just move that background slightly back, just so I have more room to deal with here. And also move that cloner a little bit back. So an F, just so I can see it. So 2 beams incoming. So you can scale them a little bit, so that feels a little bit better. And then same for the pedestal, like we wanted maybe some object that kind of holds the whole structure or creates like a supportive, just kind of, and we can have this 1920, since we know that that's the width of our display, and apply the same plastic glossy, less wider, just going into that lattice beam. And we can apply as well the fillet, so just 1 centimeter. Let's make sure we're going all the way down. So this is it for our display structure, and we can say like a pedestal. Then we have the beams. We're going to drag it all onto display. So we have display here, and the back, and we have pedestal, 2 beams. And this would be our display structure. We can just bring this back, sir, even though it's not visible. It's going to be visible here above. It's going to play something different. She's going to save this. You could see like I have 350 frames on that animation, so I changed it to 350. And you have like a nice mock-up for any of your animation. But the way I was like trying to think about it and improve it was actually like adding some people. I'm just gonna rotate the dome light a bit, just so I changed the direction on those panels before. Behind, so you can see like you can have like this. I like it. And then I'll increase the saturation and gamma, just create more contrasty look. And for the plastic glossy, actually we can make it a little more rough. Just I don't want this reflection on the bottom. I think it's taking too much attention. So if there's like a low poly people, so I was adding these kind of low poly people here, and this is simply just a cloner and a randomizer with this texture of the people where they like semi-transparent, and just plug in noise into opacity. So we can try to look how we would do this. I can actually take this cloner with a couple of people and bring it into this scene. You see what's happening is actually, it's just this bunch of people, which we can make even like more narrow. And then I'll apply random object to it. It's just not going to be controlling the Y position. So I'm just going to press 0 there. So it's actually, this is up and down. So we want to be controlling like the spread them a bit. This is 0. So they're all on the ground. So when I go in front again, I see like how they look. We can make them a bit bigger. Put our human reference here. You see that they should be a bit bigger. So 170. So we're gonna make them all scale a bit. Just so they fit our human reference. Remove it again. Jump in into camera. They're gonna go people. Spread them out even more. Take the camera a bit down. So it's like a level of eye level of those people. So let's 180, and we can pitch it slightly up, just so he's still like facing more like from the ground. So this would be like the level I would leave it at. And now you see that these people are moving, they're kind of choosing different direction. So I'm using this vibrate tag, which is essentially moving people in all directions with this frequency of like 11. So if I would zero out, so we just want to move them like left and right, back and forth. So something like this. And we also have them rotate, not like that, how we jam, not like that, but like that. So they kind of randomly turn to different directions, and like they keep walking. And then we have this material here, which is essentially just the maximum noise into opacity. So if I be looking at that, we could be actually rotating this like that, and we can increase the contrast. So if I be removing it, you would see like just a little bit through those. And I can do per object or world. So they're kind of passing through. So if you do object, kind of all the rules apply same. But then again, we learn we can jitter, or we can do the float into offset. So float into input, offset on the maximum noise. And again, we put 2000 there. And then each person gets their own kind of variation of this. And we can again control this in like a noise. So some of the people will be very much like in, and some of them will be just the shadows. We can also have like geometry tag tessellation, just so they're more rounded, because they are very low poly. So we can round them with the tag. I mean, it's creating weird laggy. And then also like for correct shadows, we really want to sit them down just so they are grounded. Okay, so let's say this would be it. And one thing we need to do is to go into our Redshift setting and go into the motion blur and enable motion blur, and then reduce the time where it's like go, I would say like 20. And if I move it to the frame here, and because they're moving so fast, whenever I stop it, they will be in motion because they're already moving into another frame. So if I would be rendering it now and I see the motion blur is turned on, I would see how exactly this will come out as like, so I get this motion blur of people, and I think that looks really cool when we try to showcase our work, and we want to get that feeling of like, oh, this could be an installation where people just walk all day and just walk by. So we could have like the camera going slowly in, just like slowly coming in. And I can go into those keyframes. And make it linear. So this camera is slowly moving in. So the other thing that I really like is to actually, have, let's say I'll turn off these people and create another camera, remove the tag, I'll say version 2, and move it like on the side. And since I already have that like cool camera, cool display, I can just click Control and rotate it 180, and then I can place some metallic object in between. That looks always so good. If I go to my models, cars, I bring in the Porsche that I'm working on, and I'll go to Z minus, so you can have it like here, and immediately it looks so good when you have these. Yeah, so you can bring those displays even like closer and have that Porsche coming like here. I just kind of rotate it like that. Or you can make the camera to be like super wide, so like 16. So these shots are like super powerful because then you get all these reflections on the car. Obviously, I have this animation applied to the camera too as well. So I copied the camera. I'm just going to separate it from the null, and just going to remove this background, just so I have it like that. And I think this looks really cool. And then, once we're done with all this and really want to like control the display, we can even go into the display and we say like, hey, I want it to be shining more. Give me more. And we're just gonna be like creating higher, but I would stay within the range of like 1 to 2. If you go 5, we can get like really crazy effects. And this is obviously already beyond. This would be the displays, and I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you in the next one.